So let me crack on with that. So starting with the men's singles, my prediction for Group A and Group B, I'll go through what I chose first of all. In Group A, I chose Anders Antonsen and Jonathan Christie, and in Group B, I picked Xiu Qi and Cho Tien Chen. Now, how it actually transpired, the two players that qualified from Group A was Anders Antonsen, so one of my picks was correct, but the other was the big surprise, the player that actually won the whole thing that surprised everyone, Christo Popov of France. Now, quick side note, I will come back to this at the end of my predictions, but I did do a video for the BWF on Instagram, well, for their TikTok, I posted it to my Instagram just before the tournament got underway, and I wanted to kind of make a note that a player like Christo, I highlighted as someone that, whilst many people, myself included, I'm not going to rule myself out of that, had kind of overlooked him, or didn't think that he would come through the groups. I remember saying that he did still have a good chance. Like pretty much everyone in men's singles, it is incredibly deep. But I did end the video by saying that he could cause an upset. I kind of meant that for the group stages. I didn't quite foresee him going all the way and winning the whole thing. But what a tournament for him. And in Group B, it was Xiu Qi, so I got that one right. But it was Kodai Naraoka, another surprise from that group. I didn't really speak about Kodai all too much. You know, he has the credentials. He was a former World Championship silver medalist. But in his group against Xiu Qi, Li Shifeng, and Cho Tien Chen, he had negative head-to-heads. I don't think he'd even won a match against Cho Tien Chen. And I thought that, you know, with all those odds stacked against him, that he might struggle. But he actually played incredibly well. In fact, I saw a video, I think, from that Get Good at Badminton, basically saying that I only saw the thumbnail. I didn't have a chance, I haven't had time to watch it, but it was something like Kodai's kind of waking up or showing the form that we know he can. Kind of the attacking badminton that I had noted when he won the Kumamoto Masters and had seen a little bit at the Australian too. It was good. That's definitely what was quite a deciding factor in his match against Li Shifeng and Cho Tien Chen, which he both won. They were the matches that, in essence, I think, helped him qualify. He did lose quite heavily to Xiu Qi on the final day. I didn't see that match, and I wasn't sure whether, because Kodai had qualified, that maybe he wasn't going to give it the full tilt to make sure that he was fully rested for the semi-finals. That didn't actually, if that is the case, it didn't turn out too well, because then he was beaten again rather comfortably by Christo Popov in the semi-finals. But it was quite a turnaround. For the two players that I picked that didn't qualify, Jonathan Christie had a bit of a bad time. I didn't see two of his games. I saw his opening match when he played against, oh, why am I now not remembering it? He played against, I remember it was Popov and Kunlevat, Christie, and, oh God, why has my brain gone completely dead? Oh, it was Kunlevat. When I watched Christie playing Kunlevat, he just didn't really look all too comfortable on the court, which is surprising because the conditions I felt were a little bit slow. You know, he did quite well in Denmark. He won that tournament, and I remember him doing, did he do well in France as well? But he did pretty well on that European tour, and some of the conditions there were a little bit slow from what I remember. So it wasn't really like the conditions weren't favourable for him. He just didn't feel all too comfortable. That's why I got to get the impression that he just wasn't sharp. He didn't feel confident in a whole area. And I think after losing the first match, it's always quite difficult to come back. And then he lost the next one to Anders Antonsen, that was kind of, those two players play each other after both losing on the opening day, both with something to prove, but it was Anders who came out on top, and obviously then in the third game when he's already out of the tournament, you can't look too much. There was pride on the line, but he did come up against Christo, who, as you know, was in fine form. So, men's singles, I got 2 from 4, so 50%. Not terrible, but not too great. But in all honesty, I don't think many people saw that Christo and Naraoka were going to come through those groups. They were somewhat surprising. Moving on to women's singles, where I can tell you now that I did do a bit better in here, much better actually. My predictions for Group A were Unseong and Akane Yamaguchi, and Group B were Wang Ziyi and Ratchnuk Intanon. And that's exactly what happened. I got 4 from 4. That was pretty good. Unseong and Akane Yamaguchi were rather straightforward picks, although they were pushed to 3 games each by Putri Kasuma Wadani. She had a great little tournament, and then she finished off by beating Miyazaki, coming third in the group. So she had a good debut at the World Tour Finals, and she shows what she is capable of, and shows the faith that I've had in her that if she continues to develop the way she is, she'll be one of the top players in women's singles in no time at all. In Group B, Wang Ziyi proved just how consistent she is. She was super solid and really, really good. Ratchnuk Intanon now, she was helped by the fact that Pornpoy Chochuang, who beat Ratchnuk on day 1, did end up having to withdraw, so that match became null and void. Ratchnuk did lose to Wang Ziyi, and then it basically came down to Han Yue, because Wang Ziyi also beat Han Yue. So it was a straight match in the last group between Ratchanok and Hanwei, and it was Ratchanok that came through rather straightforwardly. She played far better. I didn't see her match against Pompey, so I can't comment too much, but I did watch her match against Hanwei, and she carried on that fine form. She was definitely moving. I'm going to talk a little bit more about her later on, because in one of the questions I was given in the Q&A, she will be mentioned there. But the crux of it is women's singles 4 from 4, pretty good. Right, men's doubles next. Group A, I predicted Kim Won-ho and Sursun Jae, and Gautama and Isfahani. And Group B, I picked Ranki Reddy and Shetty, and Alfian and Fikri. And as it transpired, I got 3 from 4 on this one. Group A, I got both correct. Both those pairs came through. And in Group B, Ranki Reddy and Shetty qualified. They played brilliantly. Really, really strong in the group stages. But Alfian and Fikri were unable to come through. In fact, they ended up coming last in their group. And the pair that did come through was Wang Chan and Liang Wei Kang of China. Alfian and Fikri had an incredibly close match on day 1 against Aaron Cha and So Yik. It was one of the most brutal men's doubles I think I've ever seen in my life. It was very, very close, very, very long. And it was when I was watching that men's doubles, actually, that I realised maybe some of my picks might not come to fruition because the conditions were a little slow. You know, for me, a good litmus test for whether a hall is playing slowly is in the men's doubles. If matches in men's doubles are pretty consistently as long as all the other disciplines, you know you have a slow hall. And in general, the men's doubles produce some very, very long matches, and that match between Alfian and Fikri and Aaron Cha and So Yik was a prime example of that. I don't think Alfian and Fikri played like terribly. Conditions, I think, you know, we do speak about their slight lack of firepower. Maybe that kind of affected them ever so slightly, but also they were in a group, the group of death, really, against 3 other pairs that, you know, Ranki Reddy, Asian Games champions, Liang Wei Kang and Wang Chan. It's been a long day, I do apologise. Olympic silver medalists, and Aaron Cha and So Yik are former world champions. So pedigree in that group. So it's no kind of discredit to them, even if they were playing. I thought they were playing okay. They just were in a group that was really tough, and a few of those close matches just went against them. So men's doubles 3 from 4. Women's doubles, I predicted in Group A Pearly Tan and Tina Murthrun, and I put Jia Yifan and Zhang Shushan. Even though I was a little bit unsure about Zhang Zhang because they hadn't played together for so long, but I went with them because Chinese players are pretty good at finding their level, especially at the big tournaments. Most of them, especially Jia Yifan, being so experienced. And also before they had that mini break, they were probably the strongest team, the most consistent pair in women's doubles. They'd won multiple tournaments in their last outings. In Group B, I picked the 2 Koreans, Baek Ha-na, Lee So-hee, and Kim Hee-jong and Kong Hee-yong. And what happened, I split both groups. So again, like the men's singles, I got 50%, and they were both 1 from each group. So in Group A, Pearly Tan and Tina Ruthven came through as top, but they were followed by Fukushima and Matsumoto instead of Jia Yifan and Zhang Shushan. It came very close to being Zhang Zhang. Matsumoto and Fukushima had to beat Pearly Tan and Tina Ruthven on the final day, day 3, the last day of the group stages, and they were just able to do so. 21-19 in the third, and it was 19 all. And then I can't remember which one of the Malaysian it was, but they served in a net at 19 all. So had they not served in a net, maybe it could have been Jia Yifan and Zhang Shushan. It was all a very, very even group in that one. And in Group B, instead of Kim Hee-jong and Kong Hee-yong, the number 2 seeds, it was the world champions, Lu Shengshu and Tan Ning of China. Now, I did say in my prediction video that I was unsure of Lu and Tan's fitness levels. Just as I recorded that and dropped it, I saw a video of Lu Shengshu playing mixed doubles in the China Badminton Super League with Guo Jinhua, the All-England champion, against Sursun Jae and Wang Yachong, a real super couple. I got a lot of interest online, and she actually won that match, and she looked pretty solid. And I knew that Tan Ning had been okay because she'd won the China National Games, and I'd also seen her playing in the Super League. So I did say, actually, coming back to what I was getting at, that if they were at 90% or above fitness level, then they could very well disrupt my predictions. Had they been that, or they'd shown signs of that, or I was more aware, I probably would have picked them over probably Kim and Kong, and that's pretty much what happened. I'm not trying to kind of claim that I got 3 out of 4. I didn't pick them, so I did only get 2 out of 4, but Just so you're aware of that little caveat. So 50% on the women's doubles. And finally, the fifth discipline, mixed doubles. My predictions for Group A. I picked Dichapon and Supsara and Zhang Zhengbang and Wei Yaxin. I told you it's been a long day. And in Group B, I picked Feng Yanze and Wang Dongping and Chen Tengji and To Yiwei. And in here, I got 75% right, 3 from 4. It was only Dichapon and Supsara, the top seeds, that didn't get through. And instead of them, it was the real surprise, another surprise of the tournament. It was Midorikawa and Saito of Japan in their final tournament together, because they will be splitting come January. Midorikawa will be going with Nami Matsuyama. That's a really exciting partnership, actually. And Saito will be going with Akira Koga, which could be quite interesting. We'll have to see. I will, in fact, while I quickly finish, I actually watched Saito Midorikawa. If you remember, what I said about Dichapon and Supsara is that they could be vulnerable in the opening match. The early rounds, that's always been, you know, most top pairs, if they're going to fall somewhere, usually it's the opening rounds. But I've just noticed a small pattern with Dichapon and Supsara that they are a little bit more susceptible. And they did have a 2-1 head-to-head against the Japanese, and they drew them first match. And it proved to be quite decisive as the Japanese took that. I was seriously impressed with Midorikawa's control and touch. He has got great vision. He's able to place it into the gaps. He's not the tallest. In fact, I think he's the shortest male badminton player. He's definitely the shortest in mixed doubles. He could be even the shortest male player in all of badminton. He's like 161 centimeters, which, for reference, I think Koki Watanabe, who's the shortest men's singles player, is 166. So he's 2 inches shorter than him. He's very small, but he's lightning fast. He can hit it still pretty well. And his ability to control and push when he's slightly below tape or above tape is just phenomenal. He has an ability where he can play fast, but he can also just take the speed out. And where Dichapon is usually pretty strong, he's probably the fastest lateral player in all of badminton. He just can absolutely, I reckon he could frog jump the whole width of the court. But because of Midorikawa's control, he's just kind of like never really giving much for Dichapon to feed on. And maybe that's why there's a positive head-to-head for the Japanese. But I was very, very impressed with them. And actually, they got through to the semi-finals, like I said, and they put a great fight up against Feng Yanze and Wang Dongping, going to 3 games. That was quite a match, quite a final tournament for them. But it did mean that Dichapon and Supsara got off to a bad start, and then that was compounded. They played the French pair, who they'd had some really close battles with. They had another close battle with them here, but they weren't able to win. And then I think on the final day, I think maybe the fatigue, because they did play the SEA Games as well, and they knew they weren't going to get through. They didn't put much of a fight in the final match. So total for all of my predictions out of 20 was 13. So at least I got over 50%. Not too bad. It's not great either. I'm pretty happy with that. What I will say, I mentioned one of them, and that was the Christo Popov Instagram video. If you follow me on Instagram, then you know that I did do some videos throughout the week for the BWF. If you follow me on TikTok, you would have seen them as well. Some daily, it almost turned out like daily videos. I've done 4 of them. I did one on Christo, and then I did one when it came to the final day of the group stages with Ratchnuk and Han Yue, and I said that I felt Ratchnuk would do. I had to stick with my pick. It was my pick, but that one did come true. I also did a video on who I thought would make the men's doubles final, and I picked the Koreans and the Chinese. Even though the Chinese weren't my pick, when I predicted the players coming through the groups, watching them play and how they played in the groups, and they were just getting better and better with each match, and then they were drawn again against Ranky Red and Shetty, who they lost to in the groups, I just felt that they could turn it around. The way that they were playing, I thought that the semis would be different, and that turned out to be true. And lastly, I did a video on Baek Ha-na and Lee So-hee after they won an epic semi-final, one of the best matches I saw at these World Tour finals against Luan Tan, turning around another win, a bit like what the Chinese did with the Indians. They did it with Luan Tan, and I said that I felt they would win the final and repeat kind of what they did last year, where they beat Luan Tan in the semis and then they beat a Japanese pair, and they did that again. So, not that I'm going to add that to my score, but I made 4 videos for BWF, all with little predictions at the end, and all 4 of them came right. So, come on. Pretty good. Right, okay, so that's the predictions.